Well, hi everybody. Welcome to this installment of HITRUST Secrets, where we take any questions, any comments, any controversy with HITRUST and break it down and talk about it and try to figure out solutions. So I wanted to open it up first to see if there were any topics, any questions that anybody had about HITRUST in general, specific, or anything.
I got one.
Perfect.
All right. My company got acquired. Um,
Haha.
so in Bold Health got acquired by Quantum Health. And I reached out to my assessor last week and she responded this morning. So anything that says organizational in the BWID or mentions organizational controls within the illustrated procedures can't just start adopting the acquiring company's tools and technologies. So it's going to be very interesting what helping make the plan as far as consolidation of tools,
Mhm.
processes, and people.
Yeah.
Um, because I really wasn't quite sure what to do. I knew what to do in my own space, but now there's two entities within one. One, so in Bold Health is like a Lamborghini, a modern day Lamborghini. And it's got all the gadgets, it's got all the stuff. It's very modern. Everybody knows what it is because we helped build it. And then we have the acquiring company, which is a little bit older, still using manual processes and things like that. From you guys' standpoint, so I'm asking your opinion. Would it be easier for the acquiring company to adopt the existing working process of the acquired company? And have you guys ever seen that? And how much pushback do you expect to receive?
So I have gone through an acquisition from now I was on the company who was doing the acquiring. But the companies were about the same size as each other. One was publicly traded, that was the one I was with, and then there was another one that was private company. Private company proved a bit more challenging actually because they were I don't want to say fast and loose with the rules, but they weren't required to follow some of the same regulatory requirements that a publicly traded company is. So the the very I think answer you won't like, but is necessary is you've got to go through and take a look at the controls and see what the impact would be. As far as one company versus the other. And, going through to just do, I say a quick search. And I know that it's not as quick as the suggestion, but reviewing those controls to see what does that actually look like, right? Is it, what do you, because the things that would matter at an organizational level, things like background checks, how employees are offboarded and onboarded, how system access is granted, how they run is it federated access? How is, a role delineated as far as risk goes? Those are some of the key things from my perspective that would be first step questions, right? How similar or different are those processes in really understanding, the distance between how things are done at one company versus another, and it, where you're going to keep the processes from your company and the other company might adopt them, then those controls wouldn't necessarily be impacted. You might have to prove it out again. That's a question for an assessor, but those controls wouldn't have the impact, kind of a massive change based on this acquisition versus the controls where you have to leave whatever your system is and go with their system. Might be a good system, might be a better system. Manual isn't always bad. Um, it it's I think all of us tend to go, oh, isn't it? But I hate to just default to manual as bad because I have seen manual systems work, but you'll have to then dig down deeper to really understand, does that system meet the requirement, or doesn't it? And this is where uh, it's once you understand those controls, it will be easier to raise the risks up to leadership, whatever that new leadership structure looks like, and say, right, here's what we're looking at in terms of how your processes align with the controls. And if we're going to go down this road, these are potentially the changes that would need to be made in order to bring those processes in line with high trust. And is high trust, I love high trust, but there is a question. Is high trust part of their future strategy?
Yeah, I think there's always when that merge happens, there's always a time period where you just are still two separate entities. You're just marketed maybe as one, but structurally you're really still two different HRIS systems and things. And those are typically, to Donna's point, those are typically the processes that are integrated first, making sure everybody's onboarded using the same system. And so I think, yeah, there's some of those organizational controls that High Trust calls organizational, but it's still like business continuity, disaster recovery. It's expected to be an organizational control, but that's probably one of the last organizational mergers that's going to happen. Your training, your onboarding, your probably even your, information security management program, those are going to be the domains that are going to be integrated first. So I would take a look at those first and say, okay, what's materially going to change? You won't if you did an I-1 or an E-1 combined assessment, you probably won't be able to do a rapid assessment in year two with this much of an organizational change going on. But if you can start delaying some of those other mergers within the organization until after your next high trust assessment, then the good work you've already done at the original company won't be lost potentially from the old. So, and a lot of it's political. I mean, you're going to have to see, okay, which company culture wins. And if you're a small Lamborghini being taken over by a U.S. automotive manufacturer, well, chances are the U.S. automotive manufacturer that culture is going to survive. And you're going to have to adopt into that. But at the same time, you can also say, well, there's a reason why they acquired us. And a large part of that may be the standards and structure that we have. So maybe politically, we can use that as leverage to say, hey, don't do it the way you've been doing it. Do it the way we've been doing it, because there was obviously benefit to you to acquire us.
Stephen, can you remind me what framework are you on with high trust?
11.2 dot, or sorry, 11.3.2 R2.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's going to be scrutinizing your policies, your procedures.
Yes.
But again, I would look at that and say, there's some of those that you're going to keep for probably 6 months to a year. And if I recall correctly, you were submitted in like February or March.
We're actually doing the interim assessment next week. Like
Oh, perfect.
the final population is being done right now, and then we'll have it submitted before the end of the month for sure.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, so your
So
timing is good because you'll have it in a whole another year.
yes, yeah, that's what I was thinking is that with that interim, you've then bought yourself time,
Yeah.
Yep.
because they don't expect the, high trust. I know they're really strict on some, on certain things, and people are like, oh, it's so rigid, but they're not without understanding that, business still rolls on,
Hmm.
and, mergers happen, acquisitions happen, and there does need to be a bit of a grace period to figure out, how things are, uh, where they're going to land.
Yeah, there was only one company I've ever worked for that the merger, within weeks of the merger, it was things had combined to the point where they could not be uncombined. And that was because the Department of Justice had sued to block it. And so everyone was ready day one so that when the judge said, no, you can do it, they wanted to make
Mhm.
sure it was a permanent, oh, can't go back in case there was appeals or anything like that. So that was the only time I'd ever seen a company move within weeks of integrating somebody that
Mhm.
they acquired. But Otherwise, it's usually you've got at least 3 months before you're even figuring out how to combine your HRIS systems, never
Mhm.
mind all the other systems that go along with it. But I would start domain by domain and just kind of go, okay, which ones are going to be merged together and what time frame that would be.
Yeah. There should be, well, I say there should be. Is there a task, kind of committee leading that acquisition integration of the two companies? Because it
Yeah,
would be very useful to maybe tap into some of the, I say project managers, but whoever's leading that might be on a team by team basis.
yeah, and I'm gonna have to start meeting with this person more regularly than previously scheduled. That way we can see what's coming down
Mhm.
the pipeline and plan accordingly.
Yep,
We
exactly.
look forward to future questions on
Yeah, really.
that.
It's going to be very interesting watching it all play out for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's
congratulations, I think.
exciting.
I mean, hopefully that's a
Yes.
hopefully it's a positive.
Congratulations.
So, um, and how big? I mean, just, you know, large, medium, small, like t-shirt size, it sounds like, and bold is pretty small. How large is the acquiring company? Is it medium, large, extra large?
2,000 employees,
Oh, okay.
So
So,
large.
yeah,
been
pretty
around
large.
for 25 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
excellent.
they've probably got some ingrained processes that you're going to need to maybe bring to a newer version.
Yes,
What are they using for their assessment? Like, what do they
SOC
have
2,
as far as posture? What is it?
SOC 2.
SOC 2. Okay.
Yeah, and there is mapping you can do. It's not always straightforward, but you can map the high trust controls to SOC 2,
Hmm.
and definitely have that, because I know you were doing a whole exercise of mapping controls to your policies and things. So um, take that one step forward to the SOC 2, and you should be in pretty good shape to be able to give them the, hey, we can do these together. And Donna and I were just
Mhm.
talking about that with kind of the debate or controversy of SOC 2 and high trust assessments, doing them side by side. In the
Mhm.
past, I know high trust had that combined SOC 2, SOC 2 or high trust with SOC 2, but it had to be exactly the same scope, exactly the same time period. And there were, I think they've kind of gotten away from that to say, kind of it's either or, but some companies definitely still think that both are helpful. So you may find yourself in that hybrid model for a year or two, and then one's going to win out over the other.
Yes,
Stephen, do you have any client contracts that reference high trust as a
yes,
dependency?
we do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called leverage.
Yeah, I was going to say, so high trust won't be going anywhere, at least
At least
not
a
Correct.
little while, yeah.
in the near term.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm looking forward to. If we can get executive support for a project for high trust certification for the acquiring company and their systems, right? Then we could potentially adopt the existing policy procedure and like things that are already working, and everybody benefits because then at that
Yeah.
point it's selling point like for sales, like I trust certified this system and this system combined,
Hmm. Yeah.
we're all winners.
Yeah, well,
It really it really is.
be careful on that combining the systems together, because then
Oh no, no, so it's still separate.
okay. Well, because if the certification is it includes both of those systems, if one's breached, then your entire certification is in jeopardy. So they're not going to say, oh, well, let's carve out this system and this system's no longer high trust certified. They're going to say this high trust certification is no longer valid. So you may want to split it and do like an R2 on the infrastructure and then an E1 or I1 on the systems themselves. And that way, your infrastructure probably is going to be more robust. And then these systems, that way, just in case that system that from the acquiring company isn't as robust as yours,
Mhm.
then you're protected with the one that you already have.
Good advice, thank you.
Yeah, and you can use inheritance because you can still inherit the controls from your R2, from your infrastructure, which will cut down quite a few of your controls.
Yeah, I think we'd have to do two completely separate ones simply because, and keep them separate because we're looking at two completely separate cloud infrastructures,
Oh, okay.
like two completely
Okay.
separate
Well,
providers.
eventually, if they ever become one, then you can do one on the infrastructure and then all your organizational, because that way you won't have to keep doing, improving out your hiring, your firing, your training, your risk assessment, all that. You can do that once looking at the infrastructure, and then you can just inherit those to your system specific certification.
And as we're potentially building out a new high trust program for the acquiring company, should we really go E1, I1, R2 like in that order?
I,
Or because of our experience with it,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like we'll have 1 year of policy
yeah,
implementation, procedure implementation, probably the most important part, the training for the people who are responsible for the
yeah.
controls, and obviously the governance and the executive support from the top working its way down. Um,
Mhm.
my gut says just go all in on R2 and just get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you guys had any like positives or negatives with taking an iterative approach?
So on the R2s, I think that that's a lot. So I've had a positive experience sticking with R2, although the E1 and the I1 were very new at that time. But from my perspective, you already have the R2. And once you identify the organizational components that need to come in line with, the high trust controls in order to maintain that R2, which will establish that high trust is going to continue to be part of the organizational strategy, then what you can do is slowly start to identify, right? Because as you look at the cloud uh, instances, right, wherever there are potentially shared components, that's when you're going to start to, is there a, like, what are you using for login access? Is that going to be a shared component, even if they're fundamentally different cloud servers? Because I have seen that done. I've also seen that, they bring it up to high trust standard, but then they keep that other one off to the side. But what you find slowly happens is you whittle down the number of controls that you need to do anything about in order to bring that non high trust legacy platform into high trust alignment. And so I would say, because you already have R2, you're familiar with it, you've done it, you know the ropes, don't walk away from that. That's really valuable. And what the new organization will find, if they're willing, because it is going to be a journey for them, but I really believe that they will discover that they have a new level of security by embracing high trust and going down that road. So I would I wouldn't I'd kind of keep them running in parallel, high trust and SOC 2, identifying, like I said, the controls, starting with organizational, then shared components, and slowly working it your way into whatever the leftover bits are, leftover bits.
Well, but I think it's valuable that the company has a SOC 2. So they're used to that rigor. I would review their SOC 2 report to see if they had any, qualified items, if there were any snags that were found, and kind of it'll give you an idea of how they operate and the controls they have in place. An I1 may feel more comfortable for them because it tracks to a lot of the same controls, but it does have that prescriptive. So it may be a good intro that first year for them to say, oh, okay, yeah, here's where I feel high trust pushing me in, between the shoulder blades to a specific way to implement a control versus more of that freedom that I had with a SOC 2. But yeah, I do like Donna's approach. I mean, if they're very in this year, very amenable to how you're doing things and your policies and your procedures and adopting those, then yeah. But you may, if you're finding headwinds, you may need to kind of prove the point a little bit with an I1 for them first, so they kind of feel what that rigor is before they get into an R2 and feel overwhelmed with it.
Before I feel overwhelmed,
Yeah,
because I'll probably
because
be
you'll be
leading
leading
it
it.
if
Yeah.
it happens.
Okay.
Yep.
Now,
But we all love a challenge, so that's good.
Stephen, do you hope to drive revenue with high trust? And what's
Yeah,
the
that's probably going to be the major decision point because there's so many customer contracts that give you a choice, ISO 27001 or high trust,
yeah,
if you want to develop a business relationship with us. So that's the main point that was driven to me from the other side.
excellent. That's great news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to hear
And
that people are kind of forcing that now as opposed to, well, I don't know, what do you want to do? And or not paying
Right.
attention to it, that there is that rigor to say, look, one or the other, have something.
Yeah.
but if the organization that has acquired you isn't an ISO organization, and it sounds like they're not, it sounds like they rely on SOC 2, then it, I mean, just pragmatically, it seems like it would make sense to stick with high trust rather than
Mhm.
checking
Oh
both out
yeah,
and
yeah, you
oh,
don't.
going with
Don't.
ISO new.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the latest version of ISO 27001, but yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a different culture shift having gone through both of those. I mean, I thought I was pretty seasoned with high trust, and there were some surprises in my ISO
Yeah.
27001 just because it's more of an audit. It's not an
Mhm.
assessment. And so it's pass fail. I mean, it's the auditor can't say, well, if you could show me this evidence, it's basically like, well, you didn't prove this out. So therefore, I'm putting, a major nonconformity here. And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what can and they can't tell you. I mean, they're just not allowed to tell you this evidence would provide that,
Mhm.
that proof. So you're kind of a little bit on your own and the whole, applicability or non-applicability of every single control. You think, oh, it's only 136 controls. Oh, that's easy. But you have to go through and justify the applicability or non-applicability of every single one of those. You have to have, management buy-in and the rigor that requires for a risk assessment. I mean, they dive deep into your risk assessment, and that risk assessment has to hit every single one of those controls and it has to be scoped specifically. I mean, it's very precise to go ISO. So it is a different beast.
Do you know what they have for GRC tooling or
SharePoint.
No,
No.
no, I don't. No, I don't.
if they have 2,000 employees, I feel like they should be beyond SharePoint. And I'm not dissing SharePoint. You know, I love it. It's a great solution for a lot of situations, but 2,000 employees is a different playing field.
Yes,
Yeah, trying
yes.
to find all those control owners is going to be fun.
Mm.
That's the way I'm going to describe it. Like this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Lots of fun.
It is. I love going through an integration with another company, whether it's merger, acquisition, whatever. I love going through the integration, the process of kind of evaluate. I'm a process geek, I guess, but I love kind of peeling it back and go right. Okay, this one looks good, but then actually going through the progression of getting everything moved over and establishing the checkpoints and then getting to the point where you're like, yep, we're done, we can sunset. But figuring all that out as you go, it is an adventure.
Yeah. And I would keep a spreadsheet of all of the different areas that have not been integrated, kind of because everything is going to be non-integrated. And then kind of, even if it's domain by domain or I don't know if I go control level, but, for identity and access management, for audit logging, for vulnerability management, all those kind of pillars and just kind of go through and say, okay, yes, this part's been integrated or this hasn't, or a time frame of when you expect it, because that'll help you also plan next year, what are we going to do for high trust or SOC 2? Because if they were imminent, you just keep doing what you're doing for at least, the first 6 months. But, if you know that these different systems are going to be integrated, then you can just say, oh, okay, now we can just include that as, we've adopted or they've adopted, our standards to
Mhm.
those. And that helps kind of a visual of, how close are we to that full we've truly become a merged company. Because there will be delays on some of those.
Fun delays.
Fun delays. Yeah.
It's all fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because it'll be very interesting watching it all play out. It'll be like a
Hmm.
whole Game of Thrones thing.
Yeah.
So much more than most people realize.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, because you do have to worry about the political piece of it at the foremost. But hopefully, you find those key decision makers, regardless of where they are on the org chart. The people that everybody looks to when you say something. When you plant your flag and then look, see where everybody's looking. Those are the people that you have to win over and
Mhm.
move forward with them and get them on your side, and that way it doesn't matter which side or which kingdom wins, you're valuable to both. So,
Mhm. Well, one of the other things that would be good, and you might already have this information, you know, maybe it's not something that can be shared, is understanding the value, the objectives of the acquisition. Because sometimes they're operational efficiencies, sometimes it's cost savings, sometimes it's, they're buying your client book, and they're specifically looking for the revenue associated with it or ins with those clients. That's really important information, because if those clients are tied to HITRUST, they will have a vested interest from the start in maintaining it. And that puts you on a very different position than it would if they were just looking for cost savings.
or your source code or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I have been part of organizations that will acquire a tiny little company just because they want the source code, and they just dismantle everything else and, kind of
Yeah.
absorb it and move on. So,
Or they're looking to eliminate competition. Those are the ones that kill me,
yeah, those are the
because
bad.
they're not actually doing it for any good reason. They're just looking to
Yeah, to be that Black Widow.
shift the
Yeah.
competitive landscape. Those are the ones that really drive me crazy. They bring tears to my eyes. I'm very entrepreneurial, and that brings tears to my eyes.
Well, excellent.
All right.
Any other questions?
Any
That
other
was a doozy.
questions?
Yeah, that was a doozy of a
Yeah.
question.
Oh, I loved it.
That took up half an hour.
Great.
Um, I can volunteer something for you guys. When you create your policy, you have a whole bunch of shall statements or like we will or whatever it happens to be, and then you have a procedure associated with it. Are you guys taking this approach? This is my approach. You have a procedure. Let's say it's vulnerability management, right? You get down into the details of how you're actually doing it. So I have a section for end user laptops. I have a section for cloud. I have a section for on-prem anything, and
Mhm.
it goes into details. This particular policy statement is implemented through this process, and here's the owner. So laptops, cloud, on-prem, so on and so forth, until all the requirements from the policy are met. Are you guys taking the same approach, like breaking it apart into sections, because the implementation of that particular control will be different depending on the higher level use case?
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, there's certain domains that you can kind of get, like a risk management. It's how you're addressing risk, one thing. But for a technical domain like vulnerability management or configuration management, those procedures have to be different because, and you want those to be specific to who's going to be reading them. That's why I always think procedures are the more difficult piece, because you have to know everybody's got a different voice that they're authoring the procedures in. But you've got to make sure that you cover all of those, because to your point, you are having to look at all of that implementation evidence. And so you need that procedure to say, okay, well, how did you, this endpoint's configured properly, or, it's patching the way it needs to. Well, what's your vulnerability management strategy to make sure that those endpoints stay patched?
Yeah. And that's where it can often be, this one policy covers these areas, but then when you get to the procedure level, it's actually splintered. So you've got, that's the procedure for this bit. This is not even separate sections of the same procedure, but distinctly separate
Procedures,
procedures.
yeah.
That way you can have this person owns, or this role owns this procedure, this role owns this procedure. And that just eases up any sort of a bottleneck on updates and publication, basically the approval and publication workflow when those procedures need to be updated. And sometimes can also help with if they will lead to information that you don't want everybody to have. Now, what I tend to do is say, right, let's have if you need specifically confidential information, link that out of the procedure, and then that's behind a password or, some sort of an authentication where only the people in that department, or the 3 people who have access to do that, then have the information. And that's to make sure that the policies and procedures generally stay centralized, but where they then go into information that not
Proprietary,
everybody
yeah,
should
for that,
have,
yeah.
that you
Yeah.
want
Like
to
you
have a
don't, yeah,
little
because
proprietary.
you want your system administrators to have access to that information, but
Yeah.
you don't want everybody else. And I don't think I would reference the procedures in the policies, but I would reference the policies in the procedures to say this procedure is to show how we're implementing this policy. Because policies are typically, it's more of an executive leadership to change a policy. And so if you have vulnerability management and say you're using one tool and you go to a completely different tool, you don't want to have to change your policy to change the reference to say we're doing it, but you can have, here's our new procedure, which references that same vulnerability management policy.
Yep.
That's interesting because I haven't actually done like spelled it out like that. What I've typically done is run navigation like extra bit along the side that says related policies and procedures. And then it'll just say, like, if you're on a procedure page, it'll say what the related policy is. Sometimes it's also a procedure that actually delivers on more than one policy.
Mhm.
Not usually, but it can be.
Right.
And so you can then run those along the side. Um,
Yeah,
but
because like your business continuity planning may reference your change management as well as your BCPDR
Mhm.
policies.
Yeah, so what I do for mine is I don't the only thing I reference in the policy is what drove the statement. So
Hmm.
I trust Boyd's, for example.
Yeah.
And then on the procedure side, you're right, the procedure might map to more than one policy, but at the very bottom I have all those WIDs for reference as
Oh,
well.
that's nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so then I end up having a list of policy, let's just say one policy, many WIDs, one procedure, many WIDs, and eventually they just all kind of align together. That was that mapping exercise that
Yeah.
that we talked about before, just like mapping all the administrative documents together because you have like one source of truth for everything HITRUST that maps over to policy, that maps over to procedure,
Hmm.
that maps over to various products, right? And yeah, it was a nightmare for a while, but I got it all sorted.
Nice.
Once you get it all sorted, it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Um, being able to have uh, where you can go into the controls and see what policies and procedures are related, or go into the policies and procedures and see what controls, are connected. It is once you get through that mapping exercise for your organization, it is a beautiful thing. It genuinely is.
It answers the question of why. Sometimes
It
people are like,
answers the question of
why are we
why,
doing
and
this?
Right.
it takes away, because I hate it when people are like, oh, we can't do that because of HITRUST. No, 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 no. That is never the answer. So HITRUST might have a control. Look at the specific control. We don't do this because our policy says this and our procedure says this. And that's why we don't do this. And it may tie to a control which says these things, but the generic answer, if we don't do that because of HITRUST, that's why, employees throughout organizations hate HITRUST because they're often done. And I've seen InfoSec professionals who didn't want to do something go, oh, we can't do that because of HITRUST. And they knew they were talking to somebody who didn't understand the details of it and would just take it as, oh, HITRUST strikes again, and wouldn't look at it. And I absolutely, it drives me crazy. I'm like, you don't tell them that. That's not true. I'm like, yes, but I don't have to do it now.
Yeah, not fun.
No.
Are we allowed to ask questions about the tooling we're all using?
Sure.
Yeah. As long as we're
What
not
what
giving away any, in-house
This customer
secrets,
does
then
this.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
what what system are you guys using for tracking of controls? Like, here's our control inventory, and here's the last time it was checked.
So Susan knows I'm going to say SharePoint is one that I have used. I know. Everybody can roll their eyes now. We've heard it.
If it
But
works,
I loved it because once we got it uploaded, so I've become quite a SharePoint guru over the last several years, mainly because I had to. I either had to put in a request for the internal ops team to prioritize my work amongst everybody else's or figure out how to do it myself. So I figured it out. But the like you can take an entire spreadsheet of controls, and if you've already got a mapping done someplace, then you can import that into SharePoint, into a dashboard, add in things like who owns this, who's the owner for this control, or who's the primary owner, because sometimes based on now that they have 12 parts, it's more than one person. But you can do things and then actually boil that up, right? Who's the executive who oversees that area? So the CFO now owns that control. And this control is owned by the COO, actually, because of what the reporting structure is. Sometimes that helps if you're trying to, navigate a whole assessment internally and the evidence and the resource to deliver that. So it's actually taking that whole control inventory and converting it into a repository internally. And you can get HITRUST agreement on this as long as you're not selling it or doing anything externally with it. You can make the if you need to make the petition for it, you can. And it's just internal, so you can then go, right, here are the controls. I've hyperlinked it actually so that you can click, right, go policy, procedure. You can do multiple policies and procedures. And you could also then hyperlink from the policies and procedures back into the repository where people can say, oh, that's what the control says. This is exactly what the control says. You can, depending on how many bells and whistles you want, you can add in fields for like, here's the screen you go to get the evidence. So that next time, if it's a new person in that role running it, you don't have to recreate the wheel. It's just a link. You go to this screen and that's your evidence.
Yeah, or you can have a screenshot loaded in there so that they can see, oh, this is what we used last time.
I
But
have
yeah, a
stayed
link
away
would be
from that
better, but yeah.
because the links can be kind of login authentication restricted, whereas sometimes, depending on who gets access to that repository, I liked to have an open repository
Oh,
so that
okay.
everybody in the company could bounce between policies and procedures and what the HITRUST control said. So I never kept evidence in
Okay.
the repository specifically for that reason. Depends on how you're going to use it.
Yeah. What
I always
Don,
kept the evidence in like the TFS project or the JIRA project, whatever it is you're running, you're using for project management. I like to keep that at I tend to pick where the tech folks are operating because they're the ones who have to do the heavy lifting. So I stayed in whatever environment they were using and used that as the project management tool for the assessment. And then you can easily link from there, actually. And this all goes into how you run the prep for an
Mhm.
assessment, right? So you can load up all the evidence requests, hyperlink all the, policies, procedures, or controls, or whatever it is you want. And then somebody goes in and you reduce the amount of work and the burden on your tech teams very significantly.
I spent years as a product manager. Have you ever thought about productizing this?
Um, Not exactly because I to try and get HITRUST authorization to do it would probably be quite a mountain on itself. The other challenge is there are a lot of players right now. There are a ton of startups in this space. And I think to carve it out and make it viable, I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing because the other thing is I haven't seen any GRC products that I love as much as my own homegrown
That
systems. But it doesn't mean it works for everybody else. It just means it works in Donna's world, right?
fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
and to your
But yes, no, I agree. Go ahead.
To your original question, other than SharePoint and Excel, I've seen Vanta try, but I've really only seen Vanta be helpful with policies, documents, and the controls for those, and being able to see, oh, this policy does not discuss this control, and having that automated way of being able to pull in the right phrasing. What I worry about with a Vanta product or something like that is that there's just kind of a check the box. Yeah, we've approved a policy, but yet they don't really know what's in it because, something has changed and there's more restrictions on something, but because it's not somebody typed it in and said, "Oh, we're not doing this today. Let's make sure we find a procedure," and all that. I haven't seen Vanta or any of the GRC tools go to the procedure level, but that could just be the clients that I'm working with that haven't taken
Yeah.
it to that level yet.
One of the other things oh, sorry, was somebody else going to jump in?
No, I was just agreeing
One
with
of the other,
Susan. I just finished a project. Susan knows about it with a client, and it was a HITRUST Vanta integration project, and Susan was spot on, spot on. Yeah. So I was just agreeing with it. That's all.
yeah.
I would like to see your spreadsheet as well, Donna, one day.
The repository gets pretty big, but one of the things that I did not have when I initially created that, and since then I've moved on. I run my own consulting firm now, so I don't have my own HITRUST controls repository because
Okay.
I didn't get agreement for that. But the new AI tools that are now part of SharePoint actually make that an even more impressive solution. And Jeff, this is probably where I've debated, over the past few years, whether it would even be useful, because the number of tools and how AI is changing the landscape of how we use the tools, right? SharePoint was useful to me, several years ago when I came up with this initially, but now we could actually go and use AI to go, right, what are all the policies that have this type of content in it? Or what are all the, procedures that relate to, this type of access management? So AI has suddenly, and when you get a solution like that, that means being able to put all of your information in that repository suddenly gives that AI platform or data lake, whatever it's using, because you probably want it behind a lock and key a bit, so you want it in-house, but it would really make that quite powerful because you're feeding the data directly into the system, and then you can start training it on how to respond and how to look for the control IDs and how to look for different policies and procedures. And when I say I want to know all the policies and procedures that are related, you can even tell it to look for that, middle 4 digits. Give me all those middle 4 digits instead of just the whole control ID.
It's a great use
Does
case
everybody
for
know
AI.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? All right. Well, I was going to go through, and it seems kind of rudimentary. Actually, before I do that, I wanted to show there are some HITRUST items coming on. Where's that? Where do I share my screen? Where's the share? It's got to be here someplace. There it is.
It's
It's
at
the
the
big
bottom.
green one.
I always overlook it because I feel like that's, I don't know, something else.
I know, me too. I was like, but I just wanted to let everybody know that HITRUST has some webinars coming up. Hopefully, oh, I'm not sharing yet. There we go. Okay. So I just got this email a day or so ago that there's some new ones coming up. Sounds pretty interesting. Navigating the HITRUST certification. So this is kind of I think a kind of a starter review of HITRUST. But then September 18th, AI You Can Trust, but that's actually coming after our September 11th HITRUST Secrets with Stephen and with Jeremy Huval from HITRUST to go through an actual AI assessment and the lessons learned from that. So come to ours
So we're going to get a
first.
sneak
Yeah.
launch.
So come to ours
Awesome.
first, and then if you want to take the discussion further, September 18th is a good one. And then that was just a conference that HITRUST is at a booth. But I thought these were some pretty interesting webinars coming straight from HITRUST that I wanted to make sure people are aware of in case you're not on their mailing list. But I think if you ask for any report or download from HITRUST, you get put on their mailing list. So hopefully you're all on their mailing list.
I'm in there
That sounds
twice. I
good.
get same email twice.
Oh,
Uh,
Uh,
as far as that September 11th webinar goes, you guys come prepared with all the questions. I'm
okay.
extremely proud of the AI product that the Embold team has built. I've said this plenty of times before. They perform miracles like almost every day from an engineering standpoint, and I don't know how it is that they do what they do, but they do it.
Nice.
And they do it extremely well. We had a penetration test a couple weeks ago. The pen tester was thoroughly impressed with our system, and it was a world-renowned pen testing company.
Nice.
So you guys lay it on thick, like ask all the questions that you can possibly think of,
Okay.
and I'll try my best to answer all of them.
All right. And we'll put that out a couple of days ahead to have, if anybody has questions that they want to submit in advance, so that you guys won't be blindsided by at least some of the questions that we have. But you never know. There's always whoever shows up to ask the questions. So we'll do that too.
Susan, I've got a question about High Trust Conference. There isn't one this year. Do you have an update on what their strategy is for that?
All I've heard is that they're planning to do conferences in the healthcare space or in some of the other market verticals that they want to participate in. But yeah, and the High Trust Collaborate is no
Cancel.
longer, at least this year is not happening. And they wanted to put that out to, I guess, more outreach, as opposed to, because High Trust Collaborate to me always felt like it was high trust customers, like we've already bought in. And so, what was really compelling about High Trust Collaborate was, well, what's coming up next? And
Yeah.
I think they're realizing that they can do that through their Trust Versus podcast, as well as at the different conferences. There's a couple of different webinars like these that they're having.
Hmm.
What I'd like to see is a more of like a question answer period. But if we have to drag them one at a time to High Trust Secrets, that's what we'll do. So we had Ryan already. We'll get Jeremy this time. We'll pull a couple
Yeah,
others and tell them
yeah.
it's not that scary and dare them
And
to come
Ryan
on.
pops in every once in a while.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, so we'll do that, and hopefully have an Ask Me Anything session again with some other high trust. I'm working on a couple others, but nobody's given me
We
any
have
kind of.
Ida yet?
No, I haven't even reached out to Ida, so I've got to reach out to Ida and see if she'd be
Yeah.
willing. But no, there's a couple other ones. It's just components of high trust, like because everybody focuses on the high trust certification,
Hmm.
but there's the report distribution system and
Hmm.
there's the high trust assessment exchange, and I don't know, where those come into play. And I see them when I go into my CSF, but I just
Hmm.
always go into my CSF, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where we all focus. So I'm trying to kind of pull in a, hey, this would be kind of an interesting topic to have, who are your customers? What value do they see in what you're doing?
Yeah.
And try to, get that word out and evangelize it to other people.
I go back to Ida because I know people say, oh, high trust QA is very, very stringent. But Ida has brought so much value and quality control to high trust. It would be wonderful to just hear a little bit about her journey and, some of the things that she's put in place that have really delivered for
Hmm.
the high trust community.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm also looking forward to maybe November when it's probably got a little bit more structure around it to pull somebody
Mhm.
back in for the continuous assurance program where we are with it and all
Right.
that. So, it may not happen till the beginning of 2026 that they'll be ready to
Mhm.
talk about that in more detail and kind of have that ask me anything on that. But yeah, still trying to get some others, but it'll be nice to have Jeremy on next week along with Steven and walk through that, and they can, hopefully then Jeremy can say, yeah, it really wasn't that bad. They asked a lot of good questions and I'll come back. So hopefully that will be the case next week.
That sounds great. And if anybody else have suggestions on whether it's, folks who have just gone through their very first high trust assessment or other people who might make great, we would love to hear them. It doesn't not all the guests have to be, somebody from high trust or somebody who's been doing it for 20 years. We would love to have, some folks who are just, what's your high trust experience? And, did you come from ISO 27001 and transition over to high trust? And what was that like? And,
Right.
Help other folks understand the journey because they won't be the only ones.
Exactly. Yeah, and looking at also kind of splitting some of this from High Trust Secrets into a High Trust Basics section as well, to just kind of have some of those. Like I've not been through a rapid assessment yet, but hopefully have that as a shared experience at some point. I am going to have a talk at some point about going through an interim assessment, especially when the underlying infrastructure has changed and what that meant. So still in process of that right now, so I don't have the end of the story to be able to kind of have it all encapsulated in a good 5 or 6 slide presentation, but working on that one as well. But yeah, I do. I love to see the beginning perspectives of, well, I came from this audit world. Even I came from as a PCI. I was used to PCI audits, and here's how it's different. One of the first articles I ever wrote for ISSA was I had gone through my first PCI audit, and I wrote about it in kind of a lessons learned. And I said, well, I know there's so much that I don't know that I kind of want to put that out as a perspective, having gone through my first PCI audit, and making it it's not an adversarial relationship, but don't tell your life story to the auditor either. There's a line,
Yes. And it is hard to guide people, but there is literally an obligation that companies have not to share more than what the assessor asks for.
Correct.
And that is an obligation. Some people say, oh, well, we just should share everything. That is not aligned with legal obligations.
Exactly.
The assessors may only ask for what they need to ask for. And thanks for joining, Kevin. And the folks at the company need to make sure that they're only providing what's been asked for. And that there are a lot of reasons for it, but the core element is that's the legal requirement.
Exactly.
And I continue to be a little bit surprised by how many people really don't understand that part.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, you don't want it to be adversarial. You don't want to be
but
but
I want to be clear, not a material omission.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like, oh, let me not, but you also don't want to, because you have had those people that are like, oh, let me tell you all the dirty secrets, and you're like, that's not germane to this audit, and that's going to be
also open up about a half a dozen rabbit holes that lead absolutely nowhere, but burn an enormous amount of energy getting to the nowhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And you just don't want the auditor pulling a thread that then turns into, a whole nother set of questions and all that. So prepping, and that's part of it is, prepping who is going to be interviewed, as far as, you don't want to feed them, here's exactly what to say, but you do want to have parameters so they know what to expect and say, okay, here's the control that this auditor is going to ask you about. Here's the process that they're going to want to review with you. Here's the, because we had to do this, it was with an HR team, because, the people that are at that company don't want to be involved in the discipline process. They don't want to know who's been sanctioned or disciplined. So it's very much okay, well, let me make sure that this person understands before, because I'm not going to be in that meeting with them, but make sure that they understand, here are the questions that are going to be asked. They're going to want a list of people, and they're probably going to pick 2 or 3 out of that list, and, be ready to drill into that information and, things like that. So prepping your interviews is also very important. We can do a whole nother topic on that at some point.
Just for fun. We'll go down that rabbit hole another time.
Exactly. But
And
all
as
right.
far as future I guess talkings, I can also go over some of the AI implementation basics as well. We built our AI governance program from the ground up. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty successful. I had a probably an hour and a half talk with somebody from a local city government talking about it, and they said like you really need to go and educate people, like go talk to other people. I'm like, okay, I will. So
Yeah.
we can do that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the week, even though Thursday snuck up on me.
It did.
I know. Labor Day week always happens like that.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
See
Have
ya.
a good week and a good weekend.
Yeah.
You too.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. If you got value from this episode, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next HITRUST Secrets. We go live every Thursday at 2 p.m. Central and dig into real-world compliance and security topics. And each session gets uploaded right here after the live show. So whether you're catching us live or on your own time, make sure you're subscribed. We'd love to have you along on your HITRUST journey.